And I am glad to be with you today to talk about the theory integration mentorship process. I have been in the pilot process, the first pair of certified educator candidate and theory mentor this year, 2017-18, and will share with you some information about what that model is, how it's developing, and some guidelines for those of you who might like to be theory mentors going forward. So welcome. What I'll cover today is how the theory mentorship fits as part of the new certification process, a little bit about the pilot experience from my point of view, what the theory integration presentation itself is about, and then some ideas that I have about the roles of a theory mentor. So part one, theory mentorship as part of the new certification process. This slide is available on the ACBE website and describes the new certification process. And you'll see in the center, toward the bottom of the slide, that the theory integration presentation happens in phase one, and it happens before the completion of phase one. It's designed to measure the integration of conceptual competence in theory appropriate to the completion of phase one. And this theory mentorship process, which goes along with the development of the CEC's theory explication, is designed to be a dialogical process and a very relational process in a pair between the certified educator candidate and the mentor. It's designed to remove some of the burden of theory mentorship from the CPE center. So the primary educator will continue to be the primary supervisor of the CEC, work on the curriculum with the student, work on supervision of the CEC with the CEC's co-supervision of students learning in that clinical setting. The mentorship model allows those of us who don't offer supervisory CPE in our own settings to engage in supervisory CPE process. Those of us who love theory to engage in helping a CEC integrate theory and practice. So it opens up this process to more of us educators and hopefully remove some burden from the CPE center itself that has really a lot on its plate in terms of supporting CECs through their certification process. This slide comes from the presentation a year ago at the national conference about the theory integration presentation. And it highlights that there are three levels, three parts of competency in terms of theory that a CEC needs to be able to demonstrate in phase one, in the areas of theology and spirituality, in education and personality. And the CEC needs to show competence, agility, and creativity in terms of theory. And we'll come back to both of those aspects in this presentation today. The rubric itself, which describes what this kind of integration looks like, is a new document as part of the new certification process. This is the first page of a 5-page rubric. The document is available on the ACBE website. If you go to the certification page and then click on the theory integration presentation and rubric, you'll see that it's available both as a PDF and in Word, so you can have it either way. You'll see that on the left-hand side, there are descriptors of what the integration looks like at an emerging level and what it looks like at a competent level. And by the end of phase 1, a CEC is expected to be able to demonstrate each of these competencies at a competent level. How does working with a rubric help? So we're no longer working with the old grid that we did in the old model. We're working with a rubric. A rubric is designed to help a student understand the expectations and the components of what will go into their actual theory integration presentation. It's very much designed to be developmental, to help guide their learning process and the progress that they make in relationship with their mentor. It's a way of guiding the kind of feedback that they get from the mentor and from other people to whom they're presenting their work through this process. So the rubric is really the document that the conversation about theory happens as the CEC makes their way through this mentorship process toward being ready to present their theory integration. I found it quite interesting that there are some new competencies that are included in this new process, and I thought I would highlight several of those here. For those educators who have worked before with supervisory CBE students. So in this new process, it is required that a CEC demonstrate awareness of primary sources that are critical of the theory being espoused. So critical purchase is being taken up a notch. People have to be able to refer to primary sources that offer critical purchase of their primary theories. Secondly, the student needs to be able to reflect on their own changes in learning over time. I think this is a really good one and encourages students to think about difference in learning styles, difference in the developmental sequence of how people learn, and so on. Here's several more new competencies. In terms of educational theory, students are now asked to talk about the educational theory of how persons not only learn but fail to learn. Similarly, factors that contribute to the hindrance of growth and development. Those were not asked. And an additional new competence is vision of CPE as a model for education in multiple professional contexts. One of the important pieces here is to make sure that the rubric remains part of the conversation, part of the mentorship or resource document. So how would a CEC be assigned a theory mentor? When a CEC has completed the phase 1 core curriculum, that's when they would typically start focused work toward the theory integration presentation. Sheila Hawk, who's the certification coordinator in the national office, will have a list of available mentors. And the mentor is chosen with input from the CEC and the CEC's faculty educator, who is assigned early in that CEC's process. So this is done in collaboration with several people. Okay, let's move on to the pilot itself. So I put this quote in because I thought it's useful to remember that a pilot is a tentative model for future development. And the pilot that I have engaged in with the CEC this past year is very much in dialogue with the implementation team for certification, and will continue to be in conversation as we all live into this new model. So last year, in 2017, at the national meeting, a member of the implementation team asked me would I serve as a theory mentor in a pilot project, and I said yes after talking with that CDC and with that CDC's primary educator. And so we began to engage, and that backed up to the summer unit, in which the CEC discovered that there wasn't room for a lot of theory learning. And so I used some of that time to do some reading to catch up with theories that the CEC held that I was not familiar with, because I wanted to be on board with those theories. And I wrote theory comments on the CEC's process notes, not supervisory comments, but theory comments, to help deepen our conversation about theory and what the CEC was learning about theory and the questions that were arising for the CEC over the course of the summer. Into the fall and then into the winter were the real depths of the learning and writing and creating for the CEC. And at this point, the papers are turned in, and CEC will meet with a reading team at the Providence Hub in April. So in a sense, the pilot is not complete. We will have more to report and be in conversation about with the implementation team when that part is finished. I have found the implementation team very open to my suggestions about use of the rubric along the way, and I am confident that the model will keep adjusting as we go. The student has felt, I think, well supported by this model. I think the primary educator has felt well supported in the model. I've stayed in direct touch with the primary educator and with the CEC. CEC and I have met approximately every 2 weeks, either by Zoom or in person, and then in the consortium of which we're both a part in terms of supervisory CPE. And then I've checked in with the implementation team several times and with the former regional certification chair. So there's lots of collaboration that has gone into this pilot. One of the creative parts of this pilot has been the CEC creating, in addition to the major paper, a playbill. Play has been one of the themes of the theory, and so a playbill is part of what was submitted to the reading team. The title of this piece of work is Replacing Judgment with Curiosity, based on the work of a Pulitzer Prize-winning playwright who used this as a motto for her own work in playwriting. And in a New Yorker article that profiled her work, she wrote about being formed in playwriting by a mentor who taught about theater as sacred space. And that's an image that very much resonated with this CEC. On the back cover of the playbill, you see the CEC taking part in a theatrical production of Oklahoma in high school, which is fun. And then I've included here, with the CEC's permission, of course, a couple pages from the playbill, just to show you that integration and the creativity that is shown. So, cast of characters. So the title creator is the playwright that she got the title from, Lynn Nottage. She's got the theology theorist listed, Marcus Ford, and the education theorist, Elizabeth Lang, and so on, and critical purchase in each of the subject areas, theology, education, personality, and so on. So the CEC is very clearly, in this creative way, laying out for the readers how she has structured the requirements of the theory integration presentation. She's using the metaphor here of songs to show the structure of what she's done. 5 themes are used across the 3 subject areas of spiritual beliefs, personality, and education. Those themes become acts in this play: transformation, paradox, authenticity, community, and play. Then there's a who's who, as there is in the playbill, describing who these theorists and resource people are. And like in any playbill, there are ads. And these are a really fun and playful part of the work, and they're actually very funny. So the one at the top is an ad for the roll locksmith, which of course plays on the idea of roll locks from system-centered work and students being stuck in roll locks in groups. And the second one is an ad for Good Enough Mother frozen foods. This, of course, comes from Winnicott and the concept of being a good enough mother. And again, there's a lot of humor. Sure, fresh meals made from scratch are better, but you don't have time for that. You're writing your theory integration paper presentation and holding down a full-time job. It's time to let go of your perfectionism and embrace good enough. That begins with dinner tonight. Good Enough Mother, frozen foods, a Winnicott company. So I think the creativity of this part of the presentation is very much in the spirit of the new certification process, and in this case shows a lovely degree of integration of the theory. Okay, so the theory integration presentation itself. So the CEC is the one who chooses the modality, and there now are more options than there used to be. So the person can choose 1 15 to 20 page paper, 3 5-page papers in those 3 subject areas: spiritual beliefs, personality, and education, or a combination of PowerPoint presentations that integrate oral, written, and visual elements. And then the CEC, when the material is ready, lets Sheila Hawk in the national office know, and there's actually a reading team that meets face-to-face with the CEC. And the theory mentor is present, and there are 2 other ACPE certified educators present at that event. And the requested action is that the presentation be accepted. Edits can be requested if something needs to be fleshed out more fully in the presentation itself. And the reading team report, there is a reading team report generated for the CEC's portfolio. And generally, reading teams will meet at certification hubs around the country. So there will be multiple times a year when people can do this. Part 4, roles of a theory mentor. So one of the big roles is really engaging relationally with a CEC. So meeting regularly with the student is important. This can be done by Zoom and or in person. I met approximately every 2 weeks over the course of this, not quite a year, with the CEC. And then reading and responding to drafts of the theory integration presentation as it's created. And being able to do this in timely fashion is important to the momentum of the student. Another role is assessment, and this is very important. And this happens in conversation with the rubric. At the very beginning of the process, it's important to clarify where the CEC is in terms of their competence with theory, and then to document where the person is. And the next slide will show a little bit more about the documentation. And then periodically throughout the process of mentorship, it's important to discuss with the CEC their progress in relationship to the rubric, and again, to document it in relationship to the rubric. And then toward the end, it is the theory mentor who assesses that the CEC is ready with their theory integration presentation to go to the reading team. And as part of materials that are submitted, the mentor writes a theory mentor report that goes to the other members of the team. So assessment is a significant part of being a theory mentor, and this can happen in a very dialogical, relational way. So here's the rubric again. If you go to the rubric in its Word form, you can expand it in a way such as this, so that you can add a column, and you'll see on the right-hand side, I've added a column called Progress Made. And this makes it easy, as you work with the student, to keep notes about where you feel the student begins, where they are making progress in various drafts and various presentations to a consortium, in various conversations with you as a mentor, and in the final document or PowerPoint or set of 3 papers that they write, so that by the end of their process, there should be documentation that the CEC's theory work has met these various competencies. And if you do this assessment in conversation with the CEC, it becomes a guide and a map, and it's very relational, and it's not something that will come as a surprise to the student. Another role of a theory mentor is learning. This was something that I particularly have enjoyed in this past year, and it allows the educator to read new theory that's unfamiliar. Some theory that students are using now simply has been written since I studied theory in depth. Some of it is simply theory that I didn't study in depth before. And then there's just the fun of engaging with theory at a deep level as a student works to integrate theory in practice. So the learning is a huge, huge joy and discipline of doing this process. Coaching is also a large role of being a theory mentor. And the developmental aspect of it is really important. So if you document at the beginning where the student already has competence, then it won't be so hard to figure out where the student wants next to read and develop competence. So where's their next question? Where do they next want competence in terms of their work with students? A CEC is apt to know what's hot for them. Where do they want to go next? And you can look at the rubric and help guide the student in terms of their theory exploration. And then always our job is to invite the CEC's reflection on theory and practice. When we are familiar with particular areas of theory, it's easy for us to help the CEC locate supplemental and critical purchase resources, whether those are readings, workshops, persons, other people in ACPE. And then at some point when the CEC is ready to start creating their presentation, we can help that person think about which modality they want to use to bring to the reading team, and think about what their strengths are and what will best reflect who they are as a future educator. Collaborating and communicating is a huge part. Again, meeting regularly with the primary educator. So I tended to meet approximately monthly with the CEC's primary educator, either by phone, by Zoom, or in person at the Supervisory CPE Consortium, of which we're part. The more the mentor can attend presentations of theory work in consortium settings, the better. In the new process, there will be a faculty educator assigned to each CEC, and staying in touch with that person, at least loosely, will be very helpful. With my particular CEC, there was not such a person because the CEC was between the two processes. But going forward, there will be an identified faculty educator. The mentor serves on the reading team for the actual meeting or the theory integration presentation. And then the mentor also serves on the phase 2 integration interview, which is the final step for becoming an ACPE certified educator. Pitfalls to avoid. So where do I see some of the possible pitfalls in this model of being a theory mentor? One would be getting triangled between the CEC and the primary educator. And the whole new setup of the new certification process is designed to involve the supervisory CPE community as much as possible to avoid such triangles. And this is a strength of the new process. And to the degree that the mentor stays in good touch with all the players, the likelihood of getting triangled is less. And I did not experience getting triangled or anybody trying to triangle me in this mentorship pilot. Another pitfall would be assuming that the CEC's theories need to match one's own. One of the challenges and joys of working in theory mentorship is learning new theories and helping the CEC claim their own theories. So that is part of the challenge, to grow into some theories that maybe aren't your own as a mentor. Another pitfall would be falling into trying to supervise the CEC's work with students. So it's really important to make sure that one focuses on theory in one's mentorship, not on supervising. And the fourth one, pitfall, using the rubric as a summative evaluation grid to be scored rather than as a formative assessment tool to be used in learning. And this one, I admit that I did misstep on with the CEC, and fortunately we worked that through. There were some time issues and my going away on vacation, and I did, written form, named places in the rubric where there were gaps, and that was out of keeping with the previous work that we had done. And so part of what I would encourage mentors to do is keep the conversation, keep the tone of the conversation consistent, keep the manner of documentation consistent, and use the rubric as something of a map for direction rather than a mold for scoring. And I do find this is the first time I've used a rubric as an educational tool, and that was new for me. And I think some of the language about it being both, it can be used for evaluation, but it's really for assessment was confusing for me. But we really are invited to see it not as a grid to be scored, but as a developmental map to help direct a student's learning and integration of theory. So, what do I think are characteristics of a good theory mentor? I think a good theory mentor loves learning and applying theory. So there are a number of us who are educators and love theory, and this is a chance to offer those skills to the organization and to CECs coming up. Theory mentor is willing to learn new theory, and that's not a small investment, but it's exciting. A good theory mentor can commit to time for focused dialogical theory learning over the next year. And I say next year as an approximation. It's an approximate 11-month process that I will have spent with the CEC through this phase 1 process. And then as theory mentor, I will also sit on that final committee at the end of phase 2. So it does require time and focus. It also requires the commitment of emotional energy for what can be a potentially intense mentor-mentee relationship. It requires keeping clear role boundaries. Be really clear about being a theory mentor and not a supervisor of clinical supervision. And a good theory mentor is willing to do this as volunteer service to ACBE. I know that's something we all do, and this is a way to contribute to the current life of our organization as well as the future life of our organization. So in our final slide, I want to point out this aspect of the new certification process, that as a Theory Mentor, we are one of many people in this nest that we create for CECs who are coming up. We create a community of learning. We are linked, but we have individual roles, and we are all there to support one another and the CEC who is in the process of joining our ranks as colleague and educator. I'm happy to engage in conversation with any of you who are interested in becoming theory mentors as this process gets clearer, as would other members of the implementation team of the Certification Commission. So thank you very much.